The style you're going to see today on the channel is a bias cut skirt. I've wanted to sew one of these for ages. This is designed to be what it's supposed to be with the right ease and everything. Lots of tips coming your way about how to sew on the bias. Hi sewing friends, I'm Karina from liftingpinsandneedles.com. Welcome to this channel that is all about sewing, limitless sewing, and I have a really special skirt to share with you. You know, when you look at it, at a fast glance, it might seem like a very simple thing that you could sew up in like an hour or so. And that would be the truth if it was cut on the straight of grain. But this skirt being cut on the bias, it takes a little longer to cut and to sew. Not that it's super hard, but if you want a really nice result, it just takes a little bit extra work, which is fine because the result is always fabulous. The fit is just another thing. I think the last time I've sewn one was a couple of years ago and it wasn't a pattern made for that, so it wasn't the same thing. This is called Cameo and it's brand new from Sinclair Patterns. It was just released a few days ago. So as soon as I saw the pattern, I knew I was going to make it. This is pull on. You just pull it up. There's a casing on the top with elastic on the same skirt piece. You just fold it under. So that makes it easy. The front is simple. It's just extended. The back is similar, but there are some back shaping waist studs. I like it when the skirts on the front and the back are separate pieces because we tend to have a different shape at the back here. There are 3 lengths, one at the knee, below the knee, and sort of calf length. Now I have to point out that bias cut skirts tend to look shorter than what you think. It's not like a straight of grain skirt. So whatever you think, oh, this is super long, when you put it on your body, it's not going to be as long. And then when you sit down, it's just going to ride up and end up shorter than what you think. So I'm not going to sew the shortest length. It's going to be fitted at the waist, regulated with the elastic. It's not going to be super tight at the hips, but it's not going to be super loose either. It will just flare nicely down, finish with a rolled hem at the bottom. Because the Cameo bias cut skirt is brand new at Sinclair Patterns, it's going to be a whopping 38% off through next Sunday, the 26th of July. Information will always be in the comment section, the pinned comment and the description box. Also on my website where it says patterns on sale, I update that very frequently and you also find helpful information there as well. If you want to use my affiliate link, please do. It really supports the work that I do here. You don't pay anything extra to use it. I just receive a small commission. It's part of the way I make an income creating helpful content here that you can watch without any cost. So if you want to support me, that is a great way to do it without it costing you anything extra. You need flowy fabrics for this one. They don't have to be specifically super light. It could be a medium weight fabric, but it has to have a drape. If you choose really tightly woven stiff fabrics, it's going to look absolutely awful. So let's discuss fabrics I would not use. Denim, cotton twill, cotton sateen, chambray, any type of cotton actually. Even if it's lightweight cotton, it's just not going to drape. It's not going to look like you think. Now, a fabric that most people think is super structured, but it actually isn't, is linen, 100% linen. I would use 100% linen. I actually bought a bias cut skirt a couple of months ago in a thrift shop in the UK. It's 100% linen, it's bias cut, it's beautiful, it has an amazing drape. So that is a semi-structured fabric that you could use, but the ones that are structured, I would stay away. Nice fabrics would be 100% rayon, the plain weave, rayon twill, rayon crepe, rayon satin, rayon challis, all your rayons. Tencel would be amazing. Now a little bit heavier would be a tencel twill. That would work amazingly as well. A wool crepe would be awesome. I would line that though. And then if you want to go extra fancy, get your satin silks and your silk fabrics and such. I would also line that. I talk about lining. It's not part of the pattern. But if I wanted to line a skirt like this, all I would do is just cut the exact same out of the lining fabric, just a little bit shorter, and then catch it on the top of the waist casing only. I would not catch it on the sides. I would leave both skirts independently flowing, the lining inside and the main. Do not catch the side seams when you want to line a skirt like this because you would ruin the whole drape. So that's what I say about that. You need 1 1/4 inch elastic. That's in the instructions. I find that a hard type of elastic for me to find. It's a 3 centimeter elastic. I have 1 1/2 inch elastic. I always thought, if I want to adapt this casing to fit the elastic I have, I will do that. if I wanted to adapt mine, I just raise it up by 1/4 of an inch, and then I think I would be okay. So many options and so little time, so many fabrics, about 1,000 options. I ended up with this one. This is a giraffe print, which I think is absolutely gorgeous. It's going to look amazing on the bias. I love the colors. It's 100% rayon. It's the plain weave, a good quality rayon, and it's extremely drapey. I think it's going to be an amazing choice. Sizing from 0 to 30 US. Sinclair Patterns has height files for every single pattern they have. Petite, regular, tall. I think that is very, very helpful. With anything that is a bottom, like a skirt, pants, everything like that, I go with the tall file because that is my height. I'm 5'8". Actually, my height is most evident from the waist down to the floor. I have pretty long legs in proportion to my whole length. So this extra long skirt is going to serve me a lot, and I'm not going to have to be adding length and doing that sort of adjustment. So that's super helpful. The ease, it's going to be regulated with the elastic. I wouldn't suggest you blend in, sizes at the waist. If your waist size is, say, 2 sizes smaller than your hips, I wouldn't be blending in because it would be really uncomfortable to get them up over your hips. So make sure that you can get them over your hips if you're a pear-shaped hourglass. So the ease at the waist is, of course, going to be regulated with the elastic. It'll be 0 once the elastic is in, but it's more without the elastic, obviously. At the hips, about 1.5 to 2 inches. Remember, this is fabric that's completely on the bias, so you have the natural give that the fabric has when you cut it like that. So it's not going to be fitted. You're going to be able to move and sit down and live your life very comfortably with this amount of ease. I have a size 12 waist and a size 14 hips. I think to blend in one size is okay, so that's what I'm going to do. I don't want to size down to a size 12 at the hips because I don't want to risk it. So I'm doing a 12 waist and a 14 hips, and I think that's going to be the best fit for me for this style. In the sewing segment, I'm going to show you in detail about how to cut it because I think that's the most important thing about cutting a garment like this. The sewing you're going to see is simple, although there are some tricks to this so that your fabric doesn't deform. You will see that you need to be quite delicate with it. But in essence, it's a simple type of skirt to sew because you have side seams, the casing, the elastic, and the hem. It's just that there are some little caveats, little tricks here and there to see. So let's see that. The seam allowance is 5/8 of an inch for this pattern. When I've cut garments in the past, I've actually used the floor. It's been backbreaking in the literal sense. So this time I'm going to attempt to use my table, and I just put 2 cutting mats next to each other, and I think my pattern piece is going to fit. These are my 2 pattern pieces. This is the front. You can tell it's the front because there's no waist darts there. What gives you the difference here so you don't get confused is that the back has the darts there. Now, you have the option of printing out pieces that are cut on the fold. There's also an option of printing the pieces completely extended, which is the way that you're supposed to cut this. When I had access to this file, I just had the pieces, half of the piece. I just grabbed a roll of paper that I have and I extended them because you can't put fabric on the bias on the fold, basically. So this is one of them. This is the other one. You can see how big they are. Now I have 2 bias lines on each of these. I don't want to choose the same one for the both pieces because that would mean that the skirt would twist. So there's this grain line and there's this grain line. They're both 45-degree angles. So what I'm going to do, I've got them in red right now, but I'm just going to get this one and draw a dash line here. This is the line I'm going to choose for my back, and this is the one I'm going to choose for my front. So that's going to help me place them not on the exact same grain. If I had my fabric extended from selvage to selvage, I would be placing one like this. And then for this one, I've chosen this one. And so your skirt pieces look like this. So you would have the waist going that way, you would have the waist going that way. It's still on the bias. Both skirt pieces are facing the same way. That is what it might cause your skirt or garment to twist. So that is the biggest trick here. They need to be on different ones. So that is why I'm going to cut it like this. I'm going to extend my fabric and I'm going to start with the back first. Here is the fabric on the table. Selvage is there, selvage is over there. This is what you don't want to do. You don't want to leave your fabric hanging off the table. In any project that you do, actually, because it can affect the way that it's going to end up when you're cutting it. So don't leave it hanging off the table. Just bring it up, place whatever's hanging right here on the edges so that you don't have the weight of the fabric dangling down your table. That's the first thing. Okay, so this is the back skirt piece. I've chosen the dash to be perpendicular to the grain line. Right there, there's the selvage, and here is my other grain line mark. That is what I'm going to use to measure, that it's the same distance from that line there. But I know my dash line is perpendicular. So this is on one corner of the fabric. You can see there is the cut line. That's the end of the fabric. On the rest that I have way down there, that's where I'm going to place this other piece. So this is the front. This is what's going to be on the other corner. I'm going to use a rotary cutter for this. I'm going to be able to cut most of the skirt in one go, basically from here to there in one go. This little bit here, I'm going to have to move and be very careful because it's dangling off the table, the pattern piece, you know, it's just too big. If you wanted to do something extra and your fabric was extra wiggly and slippery, you could spray it with spray starch and it would turn stiff. That eventually would wear out and then your fabric would become soft again, and that would help you manipulate the fabric. I've actually never done that in my whole life, but I know it's something valid that you can try. Before scooting this up on my cutting board, what I did was put tons and tons of pins here around this area that was dangling so that the fabric wouldn't move. I've also got the fabric there so that it's not hanging off the table, and this is all I couldn't cut in one go, this little corner here. So I'm gonna have to do that same thing on the other skirt piece. Now I'm gonna remove my pins and all of that and just manipulate this super delicately. I have to mark my waist darts right there on the top. I've used yellow tracing paper to mark my darts. I can see them right now very clearly. They're gonna be sewn as fast as I can because I know I'm gonna lose the marks, so that'll be a priority. Okay, and what can I say about this? Just handle it very delicately because it can stretch out in all directions. So I'm just gonna fold it nice and neatly, put it aside, and then only pick it up when I'm ready to sew. Okay, here is the other end of the cut edge. That is the selvage along the cutting mat. So this is the corner where I'm gonna place my other skirt piece. Remember, I had chosen the positioning here. This line here is the one with the dash that goes perpendicular to the selvage. This one here is the one I'm using as a grain line mark so I can measure my pattern piece. You know, when you measure your grain line, you just go from the edge, measure up to the line. It's 46 centimeters here. And then I go down here and attempt to get the same. It's 43 now, so you can see how off that is. That's 46. This is 45 now. 46, 46. So that is how it's going to be correctly cut. I'm going to do the exact same thing you saw me do, cut along most of it with my rotary cutter, and then I just have a corner dangling down there that I have to cut separately. Only 2 pattern pieces for the Cameo skirt. I've folded mine so they fit the table. I've just cut them out, being very careful with them. This is the front, that's the back. The back has waist darts there, and that's all you need because the casing is incorporated into this area. Very easy elastic finish, and that's basically it. We're going to head over to the sewing machine and show you what you need to be careful with over there. Stay stitching, super important in anything bias cut. We want it to be nice and drapey, but we don't want it to deform. And it can do that right in front of your eyes, basically. So I'm doing the waist first. I'm going from the side into the center and then from the side into the center. That's how I get it to stay symmetrical on the waist. You don't want to leave your fabric hanging off the table. You want to keep it next to you so that it doesn't hang and the weight of it doesn't go anywhere. The seam allowance is 5/8 here, so I'm going to go just under that at about 1/2 inch. Short stitch, normal stitch length, straight stitch. I'm also going to stay stitch the sides. I'm going in the same direction from the waist down to the hem area. Same, I'm going just under the 5/8 seam allowance we're going to use afterwards. You know, some people might think this is too much overkill. I don't think so. I think it's worth it. And it's just a few extra minutes of your time, and it's going to give you so much more confidence later to sew the actual seam. That's one side. Repeat on the other side. Remember, in the same direction from the waist down to the hem area. Now that all the sides have been stay stitched, I feel so much more confident. It doesn't mean I'm going to be throwing my fabric around, but I don't feel like I have to pick it up like with tweezers. You can do a straight stitch with a bit of a longer stitch length just so that the fabric has enough space to wiggle in the seam, or you can do a narrow zigzag, similar to what we do with knits. In my case, that 7 is a zigzag. The width of it would be very shallow, so I would go 0.5, and then the stitch length would be 3. So that's an option, narrow zigzag or a straight stitch but with a slightly longer stitch length. I'm going to go narrow zigzag. This is one of the darts at the back. I'm going to sew it the exact same way I sew every single dart, from the tip up to the widest part. If you've never tried it, give it a go. With the wheel, I push the needle in by hand to make sure it's right on the edge, no back stitching, and then I go for it. Right here at the tip, just a few knots by hand, and we call it a day. Look how neat that finishes there. You can barely see it. It's very discreet dart. These darts are going to be pressed towards the side. That's something I'm going to do later. There is the back. I have just pressed those darts. I'm going to align the side seams here very carefully. Along the edge, there's 2 little marks that I've got marked so that we can line them up perfectly. And then we're going to sew them in the same direction, from the top down to the bottom. Okay, here we have our side seams pinned. Stay stitching helps a great deal. They actually matched from top to bottom. I don't have one side longer than the other, nothing stretched out, so that is marvelous. If you have watched me sew a lot, many times you might have seen me serging edges sort of on the first steps, and then I go ahead and sew seams. That is okay if you're sewing garments cut on the normal straight of grain, no worries. But for a bias cut garment, do not. No, just never. Thumbs down, don't do that, because you're going to end up deforming the whole thing. When you get to sewing your seam, nothing's going to match up. So I would never do that with a bias cut garment. I'm going to go ahead and sew the seam. It's just a straight seam. Super careful, 5/8 seam allowance. Once I've done both in the same direction from the waist down, I'm going to go ahead and serge as a second step, which would be generally what you do anyway. Let me show you this narrow zigzag. It's this one. That was the stay stitching before, but check it out. You can barely tell, and it's going to allow for the give that a garment has on the bias. You can barely tell. It would make a difference in how it moves and how it hangs. When you serge the edges, of course, you're going to do them in the same direction that we've always been doing, from the waist down for both of them. As I serge this, you see that I am actually trimming some of the seam allowance away. 5/8 is not my preference. I don't want all that bulk with this light fabric in there, so I'm trimming it down to about 3/8 of an inch. I'm also thinking about the future tiny little hem that I have to do at the bottom, where I also don't want to have a whole bunch of seam allowance on the sides. Now I'm working on the casing, so I have folded that in by 5/8 of an inch. I did that by hand basting. I did that first. I can pretty much eyeball 5/8, so I did that and then I pressed it. I don't like going to the iron with a bias cut garment and folding it live because it gets really wonky and you start burning yourself. So hand basting is a good idea. I have pressed it after hand basting it, so it's super neat. And now the next fold is enough for your elastic to fit. So I have this elastic. I'm going to measure it. It's a little bit wider than what the pattern says, but I don't think it'll make a huge difference in the grand scheme of things. 1/4 of an inch is not a huge amount. So I'm just going to measure it like this, give myself a little bit of wiggle room, and do the next fold like that. I'm going to measure what that distance is and then fold it all the way around super, super neatly. I'm probably going to hand baste that as well and then give it a final press, and then I can sew the casing and put the elastic through. Okay, there it is, hand basted. I'm going to leave a little gap around the back area. It's the most discreet area, so that I can put my elastic through, and I'm going to sew this. I'm doing it with the wrong sides up just so I can see the edge of my fold. My thread on the bobbin is exactly the same, so it's not going to look any different. After I hand basted this on, I actually removed the stay stitch that I'd done at the beginning for the waist area because I don't need that anymore and it was actually getting in the way. So once everything was basted, there was some tension from that stay stitching there, so I removed it. Before threading this, I am going to give this top of the waist a little press just to set it all. And then I'm going to put my elastic through. Okay, you didn't need to see me thread this. That is extremely boring. But once I get this much left over, I pin it so that it doesn't end up being eaten in there. It's happened before. Now that I'm out the other side, I just make sure that the elastic hasn't twisted around. And now I can remove this huge safety pin. I like to butt them against each other like that and then do huge zigzag stitches like that over and over and over. And that's how I catch it. And then you end up with a really flat edge right there instead of overlapping. And zigzag, that just gives you extra bulk. The correct thing to do would be to hang your skirt like this and leave it for a couple of days, 1 day, 2 days, so that the hem can settle. Do I have time to do that? No. So I'm just going to go ahead and do my hem, with the asterisk that I'm someone that will be willing to redo the hem if things stretch out and get deformed over time. But if you're not going to redo your hem, please wait a few days. You're probably not filming videos like I am, but yeah, I just can't wait for 2 days right now, so I'm going to do it. Little hem, 2 folds of 1/4 inch. I've done my first fold and hand basted that. I always do my tiny hems like this. I don't have an issue with all the hand basting. And then I'm going to fold it again and hand baste it again. And then I'll be set to sew that. Sewing, just careful right there on the edge. It's a really delicate hem. It's not a type of hem I do frequently. With this type of bias cut skirt, this is the nicest, best hem you can do. I wouldn't be doing a big hem allowance. It would just get deformed and wavy and it wouldn't look great. There are presser feet that can do this. I've never tried that. I just keep it simple and do it by hand. Check out my giraffe skirt. I'm so happy with it. This is a fabric I bought last year on an online shop here in Brazil. As soon as I saw it, yeah, I'd never seen giraffe print before. I love the tones, the colors, and sort of the print is such. I was called a giraffe so much when I was growing up, ever since I was really small, like think like a 7, 8-year-old. I was always considerably taller than everyone else. I'm talking like more than a head. And so I was a child at heart. I was out there, you know, being crazy, running around, and I just looked very different. I was taller than the boys. So I got called that a lot when I was little. Puberty years, I did not like that. But as soon as I hit my teens, I really embraced my height and how there's nothing I could do about it. Thanks to mom and dad, they're both tall. So yeah, why not make a giraffe skirt and just be one with this? I love how it turned out. The waist area is super discreet. It's not like you have this whole amount of gathering right here. It's how the bias will behave. And so my casing is a little bit bigger, 1/4 inch bigger to fit my 1/4 inch bigger elastic. That's fine. I wouldn't fuss much about that. Very neat. This is the front. The back has the dots here, but because this print is so busy, when I see it, I can't really tell. So as usual, at the back, I've sewn in a little bit of red right there so that I can see that really quickly when I'm getting dressed. You know, the fact that I stay stitch the sides mean that they're really firm and stable. Like if I pull on them, they're really stable. It feels like a garment that was cut on the straight of grain, but it wasn't. So that is super helpful. I know this is not going to lengthen and start distorting. Stay stitching the side seams can prevent your hem from getting really deformed later on as well. Although, you know, I did not wait 24 to 48 hours for the hem to settle. I just did it because I wanted to finish my video. But yeah, folding it twice, 1/4 inch, really nice. I hand basted everything. It was really relaxing. It turned out very neat. There's no twisting. It's just a really nice little discreet hem. I think hem should always be discreet. And when I see a hem from far away that is really thin and twisting, I'm like, I can't help but want to go and unpick that and sew that again on someone else's garment. I'm not going to do that, obviously. I'm not going to say anything either. And I'm talking about ready to wear. So I think this was great. Look, it took me a couple of hours to cut and to sew. Let's say about 6 to 7 hours, just because I was being super careful and of course I was filming. But this is not something that's going to take you days on end or the whole day. If this was a regular skirt cut on the straight of grain, it would take you like 2 hours to sew, but it wouldn't look the same. If you think you can take a regular skirt and just cut it on the bias, this is not going to be the same. You usually have to size down 2 or even 3 sizes to get the skirt to fit. So if you're a size 10, for example, on your skirt that's meant to be cut on the straight of grain, that's going to have more ease. You cut it on the bias, it's going to fall off you. So it's not as simple as that. So the fact that this was drafted to fit perfectly on the bias is really good. I didn't have a bias cut skirt pattern. I had done what I've told you before about sizing down and such. This is much better. If you'd wondered how midi skirts looked on me, you're going to see that now. I had fun with the styling. This is my Cameo bias cut skirt from Sinclair Patterns. I have a size 12 blended to a 14 at the hips. This is a tall file. There is a shorter cut line on the pattern and a longer one. I've got the middle one midi below the knee. Not common for you to see, but for a bias cut skirt, I think it's very appropriate. I love this rayon in a giraffe print. I'm totally embracing a little bit of a nickname I had when I was smaller. I've got it paired with a neat top that's shorter, that has a hemband. I think it's appropriate to show off the skirt, and of course the colors match here. This is a beautiful, beautiful outfit. When the weather gets a little bit hotter, I can't wait. I do have a little slip underneath because the fabric is fairly lightweight. Check it out. Very simple construction once you have all the precautions down. Side seams, casing that is part of the piece with an elastic on the inside. Very nice. The front is an extended piece, so is the back, but at the back we have two shaping dots right there that are super, super hidden within the print right there. Little tiny baby hem, just gorgeous. The ease is perfect, so nice. Let's make the skirt autumnish. I thrifted this brown denim jacket about 15 years ago. It's really nice. Some brown loafers. I kept the same beige top just to break it up a little bit. Print of the skirt is everything. It's the star of the show basically. I could walk around all day in this outfit and be super comfy and feel awesome in my bias cut giraffe skirt. So pretty. Oh my gosh, I can't get over how pretty this skirt is. I've brought out a fitted brown cami that's tucked into the skirt so you can really see the details. This is not how I would actually wear this, but it's just so that you can see the waist area, the casing and all of that. Super discreet, there's no evident gathering over here. Let's see how I would actually wear this. I see this giraffe print as a neutral, same as how I would see a leopard print just because of the tones in here. So I would be happy to add on a bright color like blue. I have the blue shoes and the blue little vest. Perfect. I feel great in these colors. I hope you give this type of skirt a go. It does not feel or look like any other skirt when it's cut on the bias. It's always going to be super special. If you have a really nice print, you don't need to worry about breaking it up or cutting it down because it's basically side seams. So you can really take advantage of a beautiful print if that's what you like. If you have a fancy something going on there, you could use that if you have enough fabric, because these types of designs take up more fabric than the regular cut on the straight of grain, but I think it's worth it. Very happy with what I chose. I'm gonna love having it. I can't wait to wear it, and it was, as always, a pleasure to sew and to share it with you. Check out the Cameo, all the sale details in the pinned comment and on my website. That's all from me. Check back soon at Lifting Pins and Needles for more fun sewing content. See you then. Bye.